Karyn Bryant for MMA Heat. I'm here with Steven Marrocco of MMA Junkie, and he is joining me now for a wrap-up of UFC 140, which, Steven, was an interesting night with some flash knockouts, some interesting turns of events, and a almost just close with Lyoto Machida taking the belt away from Jon, but it didn't happen.
Yeah,
it didn't happen.
So
we'll start with the pay-per-view card, and then if we have time, we'll backtrack a little bit. But right out of the gate, Mark Hominck and the Korean Zombie go at it in a 7-second fight.
Not really a whole lot to talk about there.
No.
I mean, he is a very smart guy. He had a very good assessment of it afterwards. He went out there. He was a little bit reckless. He knew the hook was going to land, but he threw it right off the bat, and he had his hands were down afterwards. It was one of those swings that you take in sparring and you don't do in a fight where there's a lot on the line.
Well, and I kind of felt that way about the whole night, that some of the guys, I felt like, let's just take a breath. You know what I mean? I felt like there was a lot of anxiety last night. I felt like a lot of the guys were too hyped up and needed to just kind of take a breath a little bit. But I don't know. So with Mark Hominck, and it's interesting because I had just moments before he came out into the octagon said, can't wait to see Mark Hominck fight again. Showed so much heart at 129 against Aldo. You know, in front of a Canadian crowd. He has so much heart. Can't wait to see him do this. It's over in 7 seconds. People then tweeted me back, talk about Jon Jones's heart, because people wanted to see Jon lose. But that's another story. Let's focus on Hominck. But where do you think he does next? Because it's one of those knockouts where he's not really hurt. How soon do you think he should fight again? What do you think you take from that kind of a loss anyway?
I just think it's really a lesson learned. It's the idea that he basically made a grave error that I don't think he's going to make again. Like I said, I think he's a smart guy, and I think once the medical suspension is up, he's going to get back and he's going to have another fight. There are plenty of fights for him at featherweight. Right. He's not going anywhere. He's earned his keep. He had a four fight win streak before he fought Aldo, and he ended up as much of a winner in the Aldo fight as he did as Jose did. So really, this is one of those fights where you get caught, you move on, and there's plenty of guys for him to fight. He's not going anywhere.
And what do you think about the Zombie, though, in terms of being a beacon for the Asian fighters in the UFC?
Wow. I don't know if he's a beacon per se. I think that a lot of these fighters, they come in and they strike TV deals with like, you know, Korean television or Chinese television. I think Japanese television. Kid Yamamoto was broadcast when he first fought in the UFC. So a lot of times they're set of like a beacon for increased interest. But I don't know if he's going to be like the guy that comes in and delivers, you know, MMA in Korea to a new level. Right. There's a bunch of fighters that have had a lot of success that have attracted a lot of interest, like Dennis Kang and people like that. Right. So he's a little bit, he's kind of hot and cold. You know, his record is not the best. Right. So he's got a couple more fights before he really gains some traction and really starts to get into that thing where we really start to talk about him as a representative of the larger thing. And
who would you like to see him matched up with next? Do you have any ideas?
Oy. Featherweight roster. I don't know. I think isn't Roop fighting?
George Roop is going to fight Cub Swanson. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, that could be a good one. There's Chad Mendes versus Aldo. He could get the winner of that. There's a bunch of different options, but
that would be a title shot.
Yeah, it would be. Well, it's because, you know, basically, you know, the featherweight division is at the state where, you know, you get a couple, you know, 2 or 3 fights and you're in title contention. Right. It's a pool. It's actually the land of opportunity right now. It's the same thing as I feel the same way about bantamweight and flyweight. These are really the land of opportunity because the roster is mostly WEC guys for the bantamweights and the featherweights, and a lot of them have already fought each other. So if you come in, you have 2 or 3 impressive performances, you're probably going to end up fighting for the title. So he could be like 1 or 2 away, and it could be the winner of. It could be Roop if he wins. It could be. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. They already fought, but you know, he could be a fight or two away.
Well, and you bring up a good point too. The whole flyweight division is. I think that's exciting because I'm excited to see somebody like Joseph Benavidez get busier. This is a guy who needs to be fighting. He's exciting. He's talented. He needs to fight more. Yeah,
Joseph Benavidez, Demetrius Johnson, guys who should be at flyweight, but aren't for whatever reason. So there's there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. Ian McCall is obviously very happy that the flyweights are happening. You know, a lot of the guys from Tachi Palace Fights, that promotion has done a great job actually building the flyweight division. And as I, you know, talked to the promoter, they want to build up guys and send them to the UFC. And I think the flyweight division is where their big contribution is.
Nice. Well, moving on to something that was perhaps not as exciting was the Claude Patrick, Brian Ebersole fight. I think a lot of people kind of just went, thought there would be a little bit more going on. What was your take on that? I felt like Ebersole did a lot of work grinding him against the cage. I felt like it was just one of those fights where at the end, I wasn't upset with the decision or anything, but I just kind of went, I was just hoping for a little more.
Yeah, I don't actually know what all the controversy is about because to me, I think Patrick was more effective in what he did. He was more effective when he actually was attacking and had position and was threatening with submissions. He controlled the position against the cage, I think, more frequently. Ebersole actually got more takedowns, and that's actually reflected in the statistics about the fight. But when it comes to the more effective strikes, when it comes to being more effective in controlling the position of the fight, I think he won the fight. So I think Ebersole it's getting into this, you know, a thing where you're talking about submission attempts and ground control and how much that actually weighs in the judge's mind. And I think when it comes down to it, it's always going to be about who's more effective when they're actually attacking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I just
you
like
are
I said,
not thrilled about that.
No, I wasn't. And partway through, I realized I remembered that Claude was part Jamaican. So then I got a little bit of.
You got excited.
I got a little excited.
Your regional bias, you know, backed it up. Like
total regional bias.
Yeah, like a cold.
But every team was not Irie at the end of the day. So.
Everything was not Irie. It was a Bumbleclad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No, you guys don't want to know what that means. Moving on. Okay, so this was exciting. Tito and Little Nog. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I felt like some of the guys that night needed to just take a breath. And I felt like when Tito came out, I was screaming, just calm down, just calm down. I know he has a lot in his mind. I know he has a lot to prove. I know he has a lot. There's just a lot at play. But I wanted him to just take a breath because I felt like he had the ability to beat Little Nog. Not saying Little Nog is easy by any, I'm not saying that. I felt like Tito could have beaten him. I felt like he was too hyped and just went at it a little bit wrong at the beginning. But that's not to say that to take anything away, because Little Nog was very effective, and obviously having come off of 2 losses, had a lot to prove and wanted to be decisive, and I thought he did a very good job. I just felt like Tito should have just taken a breath and paused a little bit.
I had a little bit of a different read on it. I'm going to be a contrarian on this one because
Go for it.
I think that Tito did a great job in the first minute, the first frame of that fight, the first couple exchanges. He went after Little Nog, and I think he beat him in striking exchanges. He actually cracked him a couple of times. Really, really good. The real fulcrum of that fight to me was when he ducked down. He tried for that single, the takedown, and it didn't work. And at that point, he realized that it wasn't going to be easy to just go from striking to takedowns. Then he went again. Nog shucked him off, and then at that point, I think he kind of deflated a little bit. And Nog sensed that, turned up the pressure and the heat, started really unloading with his hands, caught him with a knee, and that was that. He's a tough guy, though. Tito's a tough guy.
I know he's a tough guy. It's just, and it's an interesting thing because he gets a lot of grief. And, I've had a lot of conversations about Tito, and is it one of those things where, some people go, oh, well, people forget what he's done for the sport. I don't think they forgot. I think a lot of people don't know. And I think that's part of the problem with people not respecting, what a champion he was, and maybe cutting him a little slack and when they want to pick on him and stuff, because the guy has done some tremendous things inside the octagon. That being said, I know he's even admitted time is getting close to the end. He's kind of ready. He said he has one fight left and he'd like to have the opportunity for that fight. You want him to have one more fight?
I think he will get that retirement fight. You know, I think Dana said it very well. He didn't get his butt kicked. He's not getting his butt kicked.
Right.
He's got a lot of miles on his body. He's been training for a long time. He's had a lot of serious injuries, exaggerated or not. He's actually had some like really serious injuries that he's come back from. And the thing is that, you know, he gets in there, and I think that the tendency is to really think of him, for a lot of people, it's to think of him as kind of a relic of the past, in the sense, in the way that he approaches his fight, the way that he engages, the way that, you know, striking the takedowns. You know, he was so famous for one thing, and that was double-legging guys and pounding them against the cage. Then he became a striker. Those skills, I don't think, ever really caught up to the excellence of what he did before. And of course, by the time that he was really, you know, I saw some really great striking against Little Nog, and by the time he really started to, I started to see some great stuff. I think the game had evolved. You know, what he was doing, his bread and butter, was no longer good enough to dominate these new guys. But by the time his other skills had gotten ready, well, all the other guys had evolved. You know, you get these modern mixed martial artists who are good at everything, striking to takedowns, ground and pound, submission defense, everything. And I think it's just, I think he's a tough guy. I think he'll get in there and he'll give you a good fight. And he won't get his butt kicked. Will he win? Probably not, against the higher guys.
Right.
And for a guy like him who's had a career like he's had, he's not going to go up to beating scrubs.
Right.
So I think he'll get his retirement fight.
So who do you want for that Swan Song fight?
Well, Forrest is fine with me. Forrest is fine with me.
A lot of people are calling for Forrest. That would be a fun fight.
It would be a fun fight.
That would be a really fun fight.
Because it's a rubber match. They both won, and I think that would be a great fight for the fans.
But now, do you see Little Nog having, like I said, come off of 2 losses, proving a nice point at the fight last night? Where does he go? Obviously, everybody talks about 205 being tough. So I don't know what the best matchup is for Little Nog next then.
I'm not exactly sure either.
I mean, it's a tough call because I feel like there are guys who are better than he is. I feel like there's a lot of matchups that'll be very difficult for him.
Yeah, and he's in the same position. He's been in the sport for a long time. He has, you know, he's been through the ringer, so to speak, and he's got a lot of experience. And again, I think he's another type of guy that has. He's a guy that'll give you a good fight, and he'll avail himself well, but he won't. I don't think we can ever put him in the title picture.
That's what I'm saying.
So it's really an issue of what fights are most interesting, what can be gotten out of his name while he's still around.
But I'm okay with a dude that puts butts in seats and gives me an exciting fight. You know what I mean?
And I am too. And I think really the case for him is it's going to be like, most likely he's going to be like for the remainder of his time, like a gatekeeper. You know, there's going to be guys that are on a bigger win streak, and he's going to come by, and they're going to test him against him, basically. So
Frank Mir weighed in at 260. We've talked about the fact that, you know, he had beefed up all that time for the Brock Lesnar fights and wanted to be a bigger man and be ready for that. That fight with Big Nog was spectacular. I thought that was, you know, incredibly exciting, and I kind of wept at the arm. I mean, it was after Big Nog's win in Rio, and the elation and the thrill of that moment for him, and just I think for the sport. Who didn't want to see him win? Taking nothing away from Brendan Schaub. Who didn't want to see Big Nog win? Do you know what I mean? In Brazil, first time he gets a fight. I mean, everybody wanted that. So I kind of thought Frank would win this fight. I didn't think it would win it like that. Do you think Big Nog is going to be able to come back from that? I mean, do you think that's a kind of an injury that he should just maybe say no more?
Yeah, it very well might be, because that kind of injury, I think it's shoulder, elbow, and the humerus as well.
Right.
As we were talking about earlier, it's probably going to be a minimum of 9 months. I mean, minimum of 9 months, maybe a year before he's actually at full steam.
Right.
And this is combined with the other injuries.
The double hip replacement.
The double hip replacement. Right. Another guy who's just been around for a long time. Now, I doubt that he'll quit. I
know you won't.
He just won't do it. Yeah, he'll keep going, and it'll really be when Dana says, you know, all right, it's time to
taps him in.
Yeah, taps him on the shoulder and says, all right.
But there was a point in that fight where it looked like Big Nog was going to win. I mean, he had Frank in danger.
Absolutely, and that's the thing with Frank. He's a very talented fighter. Yeah. He's had a lot of success young in the sport, and that both helps him and I think it hurts him a little bit, because to me, when I saw Frank in there trading punches in the pocket, he seemed a little bit casual for my tastes in taking some of those punches. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because he basically took a lot of shots that I didn't think he had to take.
Right.
And the thing is that nearly sunk him. I think that sunk him when he was fighting Brock for the second time.
Yeah.
Hanging out in that position too long instead of scrambling like mad. Now, Brock Lesnar's a tough guy to get off, get up from, but nonetheless, I think he was just a little bit, I think his attitude is, you can't hurt me. That's the attitude that I get when I see him fight. You can't hurt me.
Okay.
And I think that can help him, and it can also cause him to take undue damage.
Sure.
So then I think Nog had the ego going on with not wanting to submit to Frank Mir.
Yeah, yes.
So.
Of course, that was the whole thing. It was like, oh, you can't get Big Nog to tap.
Right.
You can't.
But he had it. And I think after that, I think what the thing is that he thought that by reversing Frank, that he could escape. But boy, Frank made it just a brilliant adjustment on that.
Well, and Frank's been
training.
He
had it dead to rights.
Well, right. And he's been training with Robert Drysdale out in Las Vegas. We've been there. We've seen him. Drysdale is an incredible jiu-jitsu coach. Incredible. So, it's not surprising that Frank has learned some really great technique, but it was surprising that, oh my God, Big Nog, you got Big Nog.
Yeah. It was a great fight, and it really puts him number 2 in line.
It was a great fight.
Yeah.
It was a great fight. Well, moving on to the main event, as I mentioned, some people had written to me, and people seem to really kind of want to see Jon lose. And this is a debate that I've had with some people, is it that they... Jon Jones is an interesting figure, because I think a lot of people applaud his abilities and his skill, and they're frustrated with him as a personality. And it's very odd, because if you think about the weigh-ins, he got a lot of boos. He gets a lot of boos. A lot of people want to teach this young buck a lesson. Do you know what I mean? It's weird. But he's gifted. He's
24 years old.
I know.
He's still coming into his own.
Exactly. And I understand, because I've even said, too, I get it. He's beaten fighters that I love. That has bummed me out. But at the same time, I'm not mad at Jon. You know what I mean? You can't get mad at the skill. You can't get mad at the gift. You can get mad at the outcome of the fight. And it's weird, though. I feel like a lot of people just really want to see him lose. I don't know. It's weird. He spurred that all the worst impulses of people. He really seems to stimulate that the desire for people to see other people fail. I know, the Schadenfreude.
It's the hate. It's the hate.
But here's the thing: Lyoto did a lot better than I think any predecessor.
He won the first round, hands down.
Absolutely.
Hands down.
And I think that he figured out a lot of stuff, and it was like he got in there and he rushed, and then he rushed. I feel like a lot of people go in with Jon and they stick and then leave. At least if you're going to stick a few times. You know what I mean? That was effective. And I think part of the frustration is that people don't like when Jon says, oh, I didn't get hurt. Same thing like when Rampage tagged him, he did say, hey, Rampage hit me, and I kind of didn't like it. But I think if there was a little more of humility in Lyoto tagged me a few times and it kind of sucked. I think people would be a little happier with that if he would say that. But he does like to say, oh, no, I didn't get hurt, I wasn't damaged, I wasn't in danger, I wasn't, whatever. But I think you can tell that Lyoto was effectively winning for a little while. And,
don't doubt that all of the other light heavyweights that are looking at him are going to be emboldened by that.
No.
They're all going to be looking at that tape. It's all going to be used basically to try and construct a game plan to beat Jon. If he can be hit this way, then you've got to believe that people are looking at that and how they can capitalize it in the future. Jon is just that synergy of a lot of different things. He's got youth, he's got talent, he's genetically very gifted, 84 and a half inches. But he is hittable, and that's what was proved on Saturday night.
Right.
Now, I think that there was an X factor in this fight. I think that after he got the takedown in the second round, he cut Lyoto with an elbow.
That was a deep cut,
when Lyoto got up, he looked like a different guy. And look, there have been some. I've heard from some of my colleagues that he was sick beforehand.
I've heard
that Big Nog was sick as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was sick before this interview. Right now.
Were you really? I'm getting sick right now, as a matter of fact, but not for different reasons. But I actually thought that when he got up and I saw his physicality, the way that he was, the way that the life seemed to be taken out of him, it struck me as somebody that had put in that first push, that big push. It hadn't gone the way that they wanted it to, and then it was a matter of surviving. And the technique, to me, I mean, to go into the pocket like that and trade. He was backing up. Jones was advancing. He looked like a cornered animal. Yeah. You know, and that, I think, to me, that speaks more of extenuating circumstances. Granted, Jon has a very hard elbow. Yes. But fighters take elbows all day long, and to the forehead is a very hard thing. There's a psychological thing, but they're fighters. They've been at the high level. They've been in fights where things like that happen, and training sessions where things like that all the time. So for me, it spoke to extenuating circumstances. I have no evidence to back this up. I wasn't in his dressing room beforehand, but to me, Jon just capitalized really, really well, and that's what's special about it.
Well, that's the thing. Exactly, and it's funny because as fights go on, Jon gets more comfortable. Even if you know, in this case, he may have lost the first round, he gets more comfortable, and you can see him. You can see he gets more relaxed and more in the zone, and he doesn't panic. Yeah, you know, I mean, and he's so good. It's just, I mean, so, and I'm not convinced. As much as I love Hendo, I'm not convinced Hendo's the guy to beat him.
I think that Hendo presents some really good challenges in the sense that Hendo's going to get in his face.
Hendo's fearlessness is a great challenge.
Hendo's fearlessness is a huge thing, and that overhand right is always an issue. But it strikes me as the same kind of situation that he got into with Anderson when he fought Anderson the first time, where he might just get swarmed and overwhelmed by kicks and punches and then forced into making a mistake. That's kind of what I see right now for Dan. But listen, you know, it's still an intriguing fight, and it always, you know, with Hendo's wrestling and ability to get on top, that provides a really intriguing sort of style thing.
But if Jon uses that 84.5-inch reach advantage, jab, I mean, if he just keeps him at bay.
Yeah, the front kick and the jab. And that's what Jones's coaches have been telling him to use more, the jab. He can do a lot of damage before Hendo even gets close. Yeah.
Oh, Hendo.
Yeah, it's tough. But he's, you know...
But do you think Rashad would have a better chance
against Jones?
Yes.
Wow. No.
No.
I'm inclined to say no.
Because Hendo is a better striker?
Hendo, no, actually, I think Rashad's a great striker.
Yes, he is. I'm trying to find a reason.
Yeah, Rashad. Oh, right. He's a great striker. Yeah. He's a great boxer. He's actually his kicks have looked awesome. Yeah. But something tells me that the way he's going to win that fight is by putting Jon on the ground and putting him on his back and grinding him out and not standing there, you know, and sort of dealing with a Medusa. I think that's the problem. He's Jon Jones is the new Medusa. If you stand around and you just wait, he's going to pick you apart. Right. But Rashad does have the wrestling ability to put him on his back, and I think that's where the fight gets interesting. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. There's so many X factors leading to that. He's got the Phil Davis fight.
Well, right. Well, and there's also something about Hendo does not have the mental anguish that Rashad has leading up to a fight with Jon Jones. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't have the drama and the loss of the friendship and the this and the that. You know what I mean? Hendo can approach it, I think, with a lot less emotion. Yeah. Which could serve him well.
Although Jon has... This is part of the mystique. He has the ability to keep a lot of things in place. Yeah. He's got his head, he's getting his head screwed on straight. It hasn't, Rashad has definitely presented a challenge. Sure. In what happened and all that drama there. But I think what's getting really interesting about Jones and watching him sort of blossom as a mixed martial artist is how he manages to compartmentalize a lot of the stresses and the pressures of what's going on in his career and the drama and all the haters that seem to follow him.
Well, he's shutting it down, and he's
killing them with kindness, as he said, which is what you really have to do.
Yes.
That's all you can really do, is just continue to do your thing, be who you are, and perform as well as you can. And that's what he's been doing.
So good.
Yeah. You know, is that tough for you? Because you have a relationship with Rashad. Let's put the microphone over here.
I'm a fan of Rashad Evans. I think Rashad is a good guy. I like him very much. I like hanging with him. I like his personality. I think he's a very talented fighter. I think what happened with those guys is unfortunate. And if you talk to some of the people at Jackson's, I mean, there's a lot of opinions about what went down there, and that's not for you or I to discuss. But Rashad has had a tough year. Let's just put it that way. And I hope he gets the fight that he wants. I hope he gets to fight Jon and prove to himself or whatever what he needs to prove. I don't know who will win, but I hope that he gets that opportunity.
I think it's owed to him.
Yeah,
I mean, I think, in a perfect world, if he does beat Phil Davis, which is
not going to be easy.
Yeah, no easy feat. If he beats Phil Davis, then yeah, he's definitely due, and he will get it. But also, I just think the fans want to see that fight because of the history. You can promote that fight all day, and it's a great fight.
I know. And at the end of the day, just referring quickly to the UFC 140 undercard, I think the lesson was keep your hands up.
Yeah, think before you... Think.
I mean, who knew Bryant would take Sosinski out that quickly? Who knew Jared would get tagged? And because Jared bounces back, that's what he's known for.
Not if you get punched in the head as many times as he did.
I think the Sosinski one surprised me more.
Yeah, that was. I think that was just another thing where it just happened so fast, and the ball started rolling downhill. With Jared, he got cracked, and then it was like a moment where he kind of recovered for a little bit. Yeah. But Christoph, the ball started rolling. He got caught, and then I couldn't tell whether he tripped or he actually got caught. It seemed like he tripped. Right. And then he was just in a horrible position.
It was tough.
Yep.
Well, UFC 140, I was actually kind of exhausted by the end because there was a lot of emotion and a lot of, oh my God, what?
Yeah, a lot of friends. Not
even about the people that I know or like or whatever.
You were very emotional for this card.
Only because even in the case of, yes, I know Jared and I know Christoph, but even Mark Hominck, who I don't know, to me, it's the heartbreak of the weeks of training and the sacrifice and all of it for it to end in 7 seconds. It's heartbreaking.
That's the business.
I know.
People gotta get punched in the face.
People do, and people need to write about it, Steven.
Somebody's gonna get poked in the eye at the end of the night. I'm just saying in general.
In general. Well, Steven, thank you for joining me, and folks can obviously follow you, MMA Junkie Steven, on Twitter, and you're always breaking stories. You're always digging up news, and
from time to time, I'm like a mole of MMA.
MMA mole. Well, cool. Well, thank you for joining me, and we'll figure out which one is the next one that we do together. But it's always good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm Karyn Bryant for MMA Heat, and we'll see you next time.